All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. This evening, I have the privilege of being with one of my tag team partners here, Calvin Ashby. As always, it's good to see you, my man. Cal, can you hear me? Okay, I'm gonna talk until he comes in. He's having some audio issues right now. But tonight for us is a very special
Yes, sir.
or very special podcast to say the least, as we're here tonight to talk about the life and legacy of the late great John Madden, as the football world lost an icon yesterday at the age of 85. Now, Madden was a football lifer, and this included him leading the Oakland Raiders to a Super Bowl victory at the culmination of the 1976 NFL season. A lot of people don't really know about his coaching record, but I mean, Madden was 103, 32, and 7 in 10 years as a head coach of the Raiders. We then saw Madden go on to have a legendary broadcasting career with CBS, Fox, ABC, and NBC. With, for me, my money, his most notable time in the booth coming alongside the legendary Pat Summerall, first at CBS, and then they went together to Fox in 1994 when CBS lost the NFC package. The Madden video game, the impact that has had. Um, there's just so much to talk about with the great John Madden. Cal, I want to get your thoughts on, the impact that John Madden had on the game of ball.
Am I recording? Am I here?
Yeah, you're here, brother.
Oh, okay. Thank you for having me, William. I appreciate being on 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. Happy holidays to you and everybody else, your family and everybody, things of that
Likewise,
nature.
likewise, likewise.
Continue. But yeah, we're gonna jump into this John Madden thing because I really had a lot of respect for John Madden. I can remember being young and hearing his name, but I didn't know exactly what he was doing until probably maybe I was about maybe 5 or 6 years old, and I would watch football. And it was this thing about the Oakland Raiders and them being tough guys, and they looked like guys that hung out across the street in a bar from the 1970s. If you saw these guys, I'm talking about all of them, it didn't matter what color they are. If you saw these guys, you would go the other way because this is how rough and hard they look. And they were a group of misfits, and they were so legendary for the way how hard they played that you heard about them long after they retired from the game. And so you got to think, well, who the hell is the coach? So John Madden, I really didn't start paying attention to John Madden until he started calling games in the early 80s. And I think he worked for all sports networks and covered football, Super Bowls. He was actually, in fact, the guy that started the Thanksgiving turkey thing.
It's a
He's
Durkin.
responsible. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, the
He was the guy
turducken.
that would bring the turkey, roll the turkey up with some chicken and some duck, and he would give it to the guys because I couldn't understand why, like I think Shannon Sharp was saying earlier, why the turkey got like 5 legs sticking out. That's because he had duck and, you know what I'm saying? He was
Right.
doing different things. His impact, what he had the ability to do, because like a lot of people don't understand X's and O's. You being a former football player, myself having played, I get it, but it's nothing, you have to play the game to really understand the game. What he did with John Madden football, which came out in 1988, was he took and he simplified the plays so that you can understand where you're supposed to be, where you're supposed to go. Because if you draw up a football play with 11 players, everybody is responsible for doing something. And especially, on both sides of the ball, either you creating an opportunity for your teammate or one for yourself. You know, he made it real simple. And if you couldn't follow it, then you probably shouldn't have never picked up the game because he made it, I mean, really, really simple. And that's a game that I played probably since I was 16, 17 years old. And I loved it and became very good at it. And he also he was like his game bridged the cultures. It bridged the cultures and it bridged the time gaps between the elders and the people who know about the sports because they've seen it and the kids who don't know, but they know who John Madden is. And he definitely changed the culture with sports games, video games by being a great coach. He like you said, he won 76% of his games. He's second all time at highest win percentage for a coach. So at the end of the day, he did something right. I think he won 103 games. I think I heard you say that earlier.
Yeah, 103, 103.
103 and lost 32 games. So you got to be doing something right. That means this man never had a losing season in 10 seasons as an NFL coach. It's a loss for everybody because this guy, he was like boom, hit the gap. I mean, you can hear his voice and feel him as he's calling the games. Oh, it's a man down. Him and Pat Summerall were probably one of the best tandems I've seen. But yeah, big loss, man, big loss.
Listen, I mean, you got a couple of years on me, so I never got to see Madden the coach, but I remember I grew up on Madden the broadcaster because for me in the 1980s, you think about it, when John Madden was calling a game for your team, you knew that it was big.
It was a
So
big game. Yeah.
oh yeah, and you figure, being a New York Giants fan, of course, I know people are going to get on you for that now, but in the 1980s, that was a big thing. That was a big thing. And the thing about it was, John Madden would call a lot of Giants games in those days because you
He
figure
did.
they had
He
they
was NFC. Yeah.
right, they had
Yeah.
a lot. The Giants had a lot. The Giants are good first and foremost. They had a lot of games with the San Francisco 49ers,
Right.
the Washington football team. Of course, they were called something else at that time.
The
Uh,
Cowboys,
the
the
Cowboys,
Packers, the Cowboys. Yeah.
like
Mhm.
the Philadelphia Eagles, the Los Angeles Rams.
Definitely the Eagles. Yeah.
So and you listen to John Madden talk, and the thing was, the combination of him and Pat Summerall, they were tremendous. For me, I always say they're the gold standard of a broadcasting duo because
Absolutely.
Summerall, and I mean Summerall was an ex-player as well. He was a kicker with the Giants, and the thing was, it was like they both had a way of just telling a story. And John Madden, for me, John Madden knew how to relate to a working guy. John Madden, he made you feel like he wasn't in a booth talking to you. He made you feel like, okay, you know what? We're gonna sit down at a bar. John Madden's probably gonna have a beer. He's probably gonna have a burger or something like that, or a steak, and he's gonna sit up there and talk football. And that's the way he was. He was the guy that brought the illustrator in. I mean, the telestrator in rather. Drawing things up. Basically the X's and O's right on your TV screen, freeze frame showing you where guys are going, showing you what's going to happen.
Right.
And that was a special impact because John Madden was being John Madden. And I just think about him and his affinity and his affection for the great players. I remember the way that John Madden would talk about Lawrence Taylor when he
Yeah.
played, because Lawrence Taylor,
Yeah.
and there's a young generation that people don't understand when people say that LT was the greatest defensive player ever. Luckily we were able to see Lawrence Taylor play, and I mean I saw Lawrence Taylor do some things on the football field that were amazing, and I'm sure you feel the same way. But
Yeah.
the way that John Madden would talk about the great Ronnie Lott, with that 49ers defense, the
Yeah.
way that John Madden would talk about Mike Singletary and Richard Dent
Oh yeah. Yeah.
on
Absolutely. Absolutely. That
on
85, that
oh
85
def
Bears defense. Oh,
big
forget
big
about it.
time, big time, big time. And then the way that John Madden would talk about the late great Reggie White, whether it was when Reggie White was with the Eagles or when Reggie
Mhm.
White was with the Packers.
With the
Then
Panthers. That's right.
right, and then I think about how John Madden talked about Barry Sanders. He always had an appreciation for Barry because Barry never celebrated when he got to the end zone. He just looked for the referee and gave him the
And
ball,
took
and
the ball. That's it.
that was something that was special to John Madden. And then of course in the 90s with the Cowboys offensive line, because they were always on TV a lot.
That's right. So
And
well.
then they were blocking for Emmett Smith, and then of course the way that John Madden would talk about Jerry Rice, and then going back to the 80s real quick, John Madden's affection for the Hogs, because John Madden was an offensive lineman. And when you think about
Correct.
and when you think about the success of Washington when they won those three Super Bowls with three different quarterbacks with Joe Gibbs, the one thing that did not change, it was the Hogs up front. The likes of Joe Jacoby, the likes of Russ Grimm, Mark
That's true.
May. and those guys really just paved the way for so
They
many
were tough.
different.
They were
Oh yeah,
tough.
oh yeah, oh yeah. And they paved the way for John Riggins, then George Rogers, then Timmy Smith, then Ernest Biner, and so many others. So John Madden always had a way about that, and then of course, John Madden's affection for Brett Favre, and we saw that so much, with the Favre games over the years, when Favre was with Green Bay. So,
Right.
Madden just had a way of doing it. And then the coaches as well, because I love to hear John Madden talk about Bill Parcells. Um,
Mhm.
Also, Joe Gibbs, Jimmy Johnson, Bill Walsh, Mike Ditka,
Oh yeah.
those are his kind of guys, So John just had a way of, and I'm saying and calling him John like I know him, obviously I don't, but John Madden, he just had a way of just touching people with the game of football. And I mean, we talked about this earlier with his coaching, and you figure John Madden was the perfect coach for those Oakland Raiders because those Oakland Raiders had some great teams. And the only reason that the Raiders did not win more than they did was because they ran into first the Miami Dolphins.
Miami. Yeah.
First was Miami because they lost to Miami a couple of times in the playoffs, and then after that it was Pittsburgh.
Right.
So and you figure when you think about the Dolphins and Steelers of the '70s, you're talking about 6 Super Bowls and 7 appearances right there. So they made it tougher for the Raiders to get to the to win the AFC and get to the Super Bowl. But you think about it, I mean, just look at that defense alone during those days. You had the likes of
Yeah.
Otis Sistrunk from the University of Mars.
Yeah.
You had Ted Hendricks, the Stork. You had in that secondary, arguably one of the greatest secondaries of all time. You're talking about Willie Brown. We're talking about we're talking about Skip Thomas. We're talking about
Atkinson. Yeah,
George
Mr. Atkinson.
George
Okay.
Atkinson. And see
That's
this
right.
is this is
He was a safety too. It was him and Jack Tatum.
and
That
see
was crazy.
and see this is what I was about to say because people think about Jack Tatum and thinking of him as the enforcer back there. George Atkinson was just as bad as he was. You know what I'm saying? And a
Yeah,
lot of
they said he took the most. He was the biggest trash talker. They said, period. He was one of the biggest
right,
trash talkers.
right. And then you look on the offensive side of the ball, and
Oh,
that Raiders offensive line in those days was legendary. I mean, Dave Dalby, Henry Lawrence, Mickey Marvin, and then of course, like 2 of the best that ever did it.
you know, throwing ourselves. There you
Right.
go.
And you had Highway 63,
That's right.
leading the way for the likes of Pete Banaszak, and then of course
Mhm.
Clarence Davis. And then even before
That's
that,
right.
because I mean they won the Super Bowl with Ken Stabler back there, quarterback.
Right.
And
The Snake was the quarterback.
right,
Right. Before he
when
went to, he ended up going to the, I think the Oilers after that.
right, he got
But his
traded.
best year
Right,
was with the
right.
Raiders.
He got traded for Pastorini. But
Dan Pastorini, correct.
but even before that, John Madden had the Mad Bomber Daryl LaMonica, and then of course he had Warren Wells on the outside. This is when the Raiders were still in the AFL, and then after that, of course,
Right. They won
it
a
was
chip. Right.
right. It was Fred
Right.
Biletnikoff, and then of course
Fred
Cliff Branch,
Van
Cliff
Cliff
Branch,
Lynch.
and Cliff Branch doesn't get it. I don't think he gets enough credit as he truly deserves as far as being
He's a great player. I remember having his football card when I
right,
was a kid. I had
right.
his card.
Right. So Madden was there, managing all of that. And then, then he transitioned, to the broadcast booth. And then for me, it just felt like anything that he touched turned to gold because I remember those floor shine commercials because you go to Sears and they had him playing like in the shoe section at nauseum, you know what I'm saying? Because he had the floor
Right.
shine endorsement. Then of course,
Right. For some shoes. That's
right.
correct.
Then of course you can't forget the Miller Lite commercials because you think about
Oh,
so many other sports figures during the time doing the Miller Lite commercials. You think about Bubba Smith, you think about Conrad Dobler, you think about Deacon Jones. John Madden was in those. Yeah, John Madden was in those commercials as well. And then of course he had the Tinactin, the foot spray, as well.
Tinactin, yeah. He's
And
there.
but this video game series is legendary because I say this and I'm sure you could say this too. We both been to barbershops where it's like, you know what, you're trying to pass the time, hey, play Madden. And for me, people play the game, they don't even know who the man is. And I call it the Michael Jordan effect, because people nowadays are wearing Jordan sneakers and they never seen Jordan play one game in the NBA. And honestly, people are playing this Madden video game and they don't know anything about the guy, but they know that it's Madden. I mean, listen, let's be realistic. How many fights have broken out over Madden games? You know what I'm saying? Because dudes like
You're right.
listen, let's be realistic. You have some guys out there that have put down some serious paper to play each other,
Damn.
to go out there and play each other in Madden. It's just a different effect of things, but nonetheless, I mean, his impact has been legendary.
And you know what? I want to add to that. I'm gonna tell you something. When you play John Madden football, and then you actually go look at a football game, you can see what's happening before it happened because you've been playing that video game. You can actually see what's gonna happen, where if it was an infraction or whatever happened. You see the whole field. When I watch football, I catch everything. I don't miss too much. You know, had I not played that video game, I don't think I would have been as more knowledgeable about what happens around the play. The play is the play, but what happens around the play in order to make the play, you get to see it beforehand. And playing John Madden football, what I used to do was I used to play with other people's playbooks until I got nice enough to make my own playbook because I knew where we was going with it. And like I said again, is I mean, if you play the game, it's easier for you to gravitate to what John Madden was saying during the course of, you playing these football games and playing them for years and years and years and years and years. And, just basically the playbook. They had the Madden playbook, then you had your own playbook. These things, a lot of people lost a lot of money. A lot of people had a lot of fights over John Madden football. It's so big right now. I think to me, it's still one of the top 3 video games right now. You know what I'm saying? As far as sports is concerned, John Madden football. They're having tournaments. I mean, kids are getting scholarships as gamers, and they're specializing in John Madden football. You understand? They're getting scholarships to go to school as gamers. And they have these tournaments, they give away all this money. John Madden had his own all Madden team. And this was real. Guys that went all Madden in the league received the package with their jacket and whatever it was. It's a big thing to be all Madden. That means that out of all these guys, you can only take 11 for that year. You understand what I'm saying? And he would take these 11 guys. And like I heard a lot of professional athletes that were athletes when he was calling the game say, like when that Madden bus pulled up, you knew it was a big game because they're not sending John Madden because he wouldn't fly because he was superstitious or whatever. But when you seen that bus pull up or that bus pulled up for training camp, all eyes were on you. And I think as a coach, he impacted many other coaches. But what a lot of people don't know is that he had some coaching. He had some college coaching underneath his belt. I think he coached at Hancock College, and then I believe he went to San Diego State, like we talked about earlier. Then he became an assistant, I believe, with the Raiders, and they won that AFL title, if I'm correct. And then 2 years later, they made him the head coach. All right, so he has actually 2 titles with the Raiders instead of 1, which most people think. And again, the man never had a losing season. And when he retired, he said it was, he was burnt out because I believe he gave his all, and sometimes, enough is enough. And I'm just glad that, I didn't really catch too much of the actual games, but I was able to catch him as his influence on the league and as a sports announcer, one of the best to do it.
Oh yeah, I mean, there'll never be another John Madden, and I could tell you, when I was a kid, that for me, I made it my business as much as possible, you know, to try to make sure that I was home, to listen to John Madden, call the game, because it was one of those things in the paper on Friday. They will let you know, okay, who's going to be the broadcast team locally for your game. And when you found out that it was going to be John Madden and Pat Summerall, you were like, okay, you wanted to
It's
make
good.
sure that you were front and center, because you wanted to see there, be there for that game.
Right.
I'm a football historian. I'm a sports historian. I have games on TV, games saved to the DVR, and I mean, it's one of those where my wife probably knows this stuff as much as I do because that's how much I watch it. But for example, Super Bowl 21, when the New York Giants faced the Denver Broncos, I have this game on DVD. I've watched it so many times, and I could still hear John Madden calling it. I mean, Pat Summerall rather calling it, saying Sims to Bavaro, and for a touchdown. And then you think about John Madden, and I remember the Giants scored their first on the Giants' first touchdown drive of the game. Phil Sims hit Zeke Mowat for a touchdown, and I remember John Madden saying, you know what, that's a Super Bowl drive right there because the way they mixed it up as far as running the ball and passing the ball, and of course, the Giants in those days of the Bill Parcells, they could run the football a lot,
Joe Morris,
with Joe Morris, right,
Otis Anderson.
right,
They had a
right,
few.
right. So it was one of those where for John Madden and just listening to him, go out there and talk and you just sat back and you were in awe. And again, the way that he talked about, that Washington football team offensive line in those days, where he talked about the Dallas offensive line, and then, getting back to the all Madden, thing, I just remember it because it was like the best of the best because you had great players that did not make the all Madden team. I think
That's
about
right.
I think about like the guys who were
Right.
consistently there, Reggie White, Darryl Green, a guy who I don't think enough people give credit to for being
World class speed.
right,
World class speed.
a shutdown corner because Darryl Green could
Yes.
run with anybody, and Darryl
Anybody.
Darryl Green was consistently on that team. Lawrence Taylor, Mike Singletary, Reggie White, Jerry Rice. So for you to be on that team, it was one of those where you know what, you were the best of the best. You weren't just good; you had to be the best of the best. And
On that.
right. And then I remember, while listening to John Madden cover some New Orleans Saints games in those days. And I think about it because a lot of people, from that era will remember this when they had the Dome Patrol, arguably the best quartet of linebackers ever, but people don't talk about them enough because they didn't win a title. You think you're talking about Pat Swilling, Sam Mills, Ricky Jackson, and Vaughn Johnson. A great core, and John Madden would always talk about them. He talked about their head coach Jim Mora, you name it, Buddy Ryan. We could go down the list, and I just think about Madden and CBS because that was it for me. Because in those days, what CBS had, it was like CBS and everybody else because you had Madden and Summerall, and then of course you had Brent Musburger leading the NFL today. With Irv Cross and Jimmy the Greek,
That's correct.
in the studio along with him. So it was, it was a tremendous thing. And I even remember the CBS graphics where like they would show the graphic in the background based on the city that your team played in. So of course,
That's right. You're
so
correct. That's right.
for the Giants would get the Empire State Building. The Eagles would get the Liberty Bell. Washington would get Capitol Hill and so forth. And the 49ers would get the Golden Gate Bridge, you name it.
Yep,
But
the Golden Gate Bridge.
but like and that was just a whole production thing. And then of course, he went to Fox and he had a tremendous career there. And I remember the last game, and this was one of the few times that John Madden was actually wrong in the booth. The last game that John Madden called alongside Pat Summerall, it was Super Bowl 36. It was when the Patriots upset the Rams. And I remember when the Rams tied the game late at 17 apiece, John Madden said, "You know what? Patriots should just take a knee and get the overtime." And they came out and they were aggressive. After a couple of plays, he was like, "I still think they should take a knee and get the overtime." And next thing you know, the Patriots got up about midfield, and he changed his tone. And of course, the rest was history. Adam Vinatieri kicked the field goal, and that was it. And then of course, he went to ABC after that. And for me, when I think about John Madden at ABC, I think about the game that he called when Brett Favre played right after his dad died when they played the Raiders on Monday Night Football.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then I also think about another Monday night game that John Madden called. Um oh gosh, it's slipping my memory right now, but I'll come back to it. And then of course the Super Bowl, the last game that he called, This was when he was working for NBC when with the Cardinals and the Steelers, and that was a back and forth game that the Steelers pulled out. Santonio Holmes with the toe tap in the back of the end zone. So I mean, his impact. There is never going to be another. I listen to broadcasters nowadays. No offense to them, but it's just that John Madden set the bar so high that it's unattainable. And that's
Yeah, it's
and that's no slight to the guys today, but it was just that he just set the
right.
bar so high.
He was the best to do it that I've seen. And you look at the announcers in the different sports, and it's very few great ones from basketball to baseball, but in football, Mr. Madden was definitely the gold standard. Um, I enjoyed listening to him, his breakdown of the game. Uh, I liked when he got excited. You could see him in the booth, with the sweating. You could see the mist out the air because it's cold, and he's boom right up the alley, and you see, and he means what he's saying. And it was just a pleasure to watch. And he was a guy that he did a lot for a lot of people. And with the Darryl Stingley incident, which we discussed, I believe earlier, he was a good guy. He really was a good guy, and a lot of people can attest to that. It's actually a lot of people are really sad, and it's respectable. He was a good dude, great coach, and they said he was a better man. So I have nothing but respect for him.
Hey, listen, you can tell the mark of somebody not by what they do, but based on what people say around them. And he was a person that obviously I don't know him personally, but you never heard anybody like have anything bad to say about him publicly.
No, never, never, never.
He was one of those. He was consistently around football. Roger Goodell, the current NFL commissioner, had a good relationship with John Madden. A lot of coaches would reach out to him as well. I think back to when the Giants in 2007, they were 10-5, and the Patriots came to town 15-0, and
I remember.
on that
I
Saturday night
remember.
game, and a lot of people expected the Giants to rest their guys since they had clinched a spot, and Tom Coughlin played his guys for the entire game, and it was a close game. The Patriots only won by 3 points,
Yeah, I
and
was.
John Madden reached out to Tom Coughlin after that game and said, "You know what you did was great for football," because it was one of those where, okay, New England, if you're gonna go undefeated, you're gonna have to earn it. We're not gonna just allow you to
Right.
to
And
just come
then
in.
lo and behold,
And then
they
lo and
learned the
behold,
recipe,
four
and the
weeks
rest is
later,
history.
hey, there you go. So John Madden, he just had a way to touch people, and I haven't bought the video game in some time now, just because I've gotten older and I don't have the time like I did to play video games when I
Right.
was younger. But I could tell
Right.
you, when I was younger, I was a Madden brat, so to speak, playing the game. A lot of long nights playing with friends.
Yes, man. All
Uh,
night long.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know it.
And it was fun too. Like, like just going through the season with your team. You could make a player up if you want. I mean, the things you could do. I mean, you could play with the All Madden team or play against the All Madden. It was dope. That's all I can
listen,
say. It was dope.
listen. I got into the game when I was in junior high, and I remember Madden '93, and like the thing that gravitated me to that game, number one, was the theme song, but then also that was the first one where when a guy got hurt, they roll out the ambulance, and they
It's a
they would
man down.
yeah. So
Here, John Madden, it's a man down. Yeah,
so
yeah,
yeah, so it was one of a kind, but John Madden definitely will be missed by his fans, and more importantly, the people that he impacted in life.
definitely. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? What I can really say is salute to that man. He made the game fun. You
there you
know,
go. So, folks, that's going to wrap it up for this special edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. As always, I want to take this time out to thank Brother Cal for
yes, sir. You're very
dropping in.
welcome.
And as always,
Appreciate
it
it.
was a pleasure. So, folks, as always, if you like what you heard, please feel free to hit the like button. Please also feel free to subscribe to this channel. And if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So for Calvin Ashby, my name is William Martin, signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.